Marcus Chen had seen death before. Growing up on humanity's newest colony world, Kerenza Prime, meant facing down everything from acid-spitting tunnel worms to pack-hunting razor wolves. But standing in the crimson sand of the Kithrin arena, surrounded by the galaxy's most feared apex predators, he wondered if his luck had finally run out. The Galactic Council's rehabilitation program was supposed to be humanity's chance to prove they weren't the savage Deathworlders the rest of the galaxy believed them to be. Instead, Marcus found himself thrown into a gladiatorial nightmare, watching as Zareth the Bone Crusher, a 12-foot-tall reptilian nightmare with claws like obsidian blades, circled him like a predator sizing up its next meal. Human. Zareth's voice was like grinding stone, translated through the neural implant all contestants received. I have killed warriors from 100 worlds. Your soft flesh will tear like paper. Marcus rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar weight of his plasma rifle. Around the arena's perimeter, the other apex predators watched with hungry eyes. There was Vex'tar, the shadow-stepping assassin whose species had hunted entire civilizations to extinction. Grimjaw, the cybernetically enhanced predator whose bite could crush starship hulls. And towering above them all, Korthak the Worldbreaker, whose species had once devoured entire planets. The arena master's voice boomed across the stadium. First trial begins. Combat until yield or death. Zareth lunged forward with impossible speed for something his size. Marcus dove sideways, his human reflexes, evolved from millions of years dodging Earth's own apex predators, keeping him barely ahead of those terrible claws. The Kithrin strike gouged deep furrows in the arena floor where Marcus had been standing. Too slow, lizard, Marcus taunted, bringing his rifle up and putting 3 plasma bolts center mass. The shots that should have dropped any normal being barely scorched Zareth's armored hide. But Marcus had learned something important in that exchange. The big ones always thought their size and armor made them invincible. They never expected a human to adapt. Zareth charged again, roaring his fury. This time, Marcus didn't dodge away. He dropped and slid between the creature's legs. His rifle switched to maximum penetration. He fired upward into the softer scales of Zareth's belly, then rolled away as the Kithrin crashed to the ground, roaring in pain and surprise. The crowd of apex predators fell silent. No one had ever hurt Zareth in single combat. Marcus stood over the writhing alien, his rifle aimed at what he'd identified as the creature's primary neural cluster. Yield, he said simply. Zareth's eyes widened. In his species' culture, showing mercy to a defeated enemy was a sign of ultimate dominance. I yield. The arena erupted in confused roars and growls. Marcus Chen, the human from the Deathworld, had just beaten their champion. And more importantly, he'd done it with something none of them had expected from a lesser species: tactical intelligence and restraint. As the arena's medical drones carried Zareth away, the other apex predators looked at Marcus with something new in their eyes. Not hunger, respect, but the trials were just beginning. 3 days after his victory over Zareth, Marcus found himself in the feeding grounds, a vast artificial ecosystem designed to test hunting prowess. But this wasn't a solo hunt. He'd been grouped with 3 other apex predators, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a blade. Vex'tar moved like liquid shadow beside him, the umbral stalker's form constantly shifting between solid and smoke. Every instinct Marcus had screamed that this creature could kill him in a dozen different ways before he could even draw his weapon. Human. Vex'tar's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Your victory over Zareth was unexpected, but the hunt eternal requires more than brute cunning. It requires predatory instinct. To Marcus's left stalked Grimjaw, the cybernetic horror whose species had been so effective at killing that they'd wiped out all other life on their homeworld before turning on each other. Half his skull was replaced with chrome and neural processors, and his jaw could extend like a snake's to reveal rows of rotating teeth. Soft human thinks he can hunt with us, Grimjaw hissed. We shall see how your kind tastes when the prey turns us. The third member of their pack was perhaps the most dangerous, not because of size or weaponry, but because of intelligence. Kalen the Mind Ripper was a psychic predator whose species fed on the thoughts and fears of their prey. He appeared humanoid, but his eyes were solid black, and Marcus could feel something probing at the edges of his consciousness. "Fascinating," Kalen murmured, his mental probe recoiling. "Your mind is chaotic, violent, like a storm made of blades and fire. How do you function with such mental noise?" Marcus grinned. Growing up on Kerenza Prime meant learning to think fast and angry. "That's not noise, friend. That's focus." Their prey materialized in the center of the feeding grounds, a pack of void stalkers, predators that existed partially in normal space and partially in hyperspace. They were nearly impossible to track, could phase through solid matter, and had been known to hunt down entire space crews. The moment the void stalkers appeared, Vex'tar vanished into shadow form. Grimjaw's cybernetics began analyzing movement patterns. Kalen reached out with his mind, trying to predict their prey's next moves. Marcus did something none of them expected. He started walking directly toward the pack, his rifle slung across his back. "Human!" Vex'tar's voice hissed from the shadows. "What are you doing?" "Something that worked on my homeworld," Marcus called back. "Trust me." The void stalkers noticed him immediately. These creatures were used to prey that ran, that hid, that tried to fight from a distance. But Marcus just kept walking, and as he did, he started whistling. A low, haunting tune he'd learned from the tunnel miners on Kerenza. The sound seemed to confuse the void stalkers. They began circling, their forms flickering in and out of phase space, but they couldn't lock onto an attack pattern. The humans' behavior was too alien, too unpredictable. That's when Marcus revealed his plan. As the void stalkers circled closer, drawn by curiosity and confusion, he triggered a device he'd been concealing, a phase disruptor he jury-rigged from arena equipment. The pulse of energy forced all the void stalkers into normal space simultaneously. "Now!" Marcus shouted. Vex'tar struck like liquid death, his shadow form wrapping around 3 of the creatures. Grimjaw's enhanced jaws clamped down on another with bone-crushing force. Kalen's psychic assault left 2 more writhing in mental agony. And Marcus? He drew his sidearm and put precision shots into the neural clusters of the remaining stalkers, dropping them with surgical accuracy. In less than 30 seconds, the pack of legendary void stalkers was eliminated. The 3 apex predators stared at Marcus in stunned silence. "How did you know the disruptor would work?" Kalen asked, his mental probes no longer trying to penetrate Marcus's mind. Marcus shrugged. "I didn't. But humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." Vex'tar materialized fully, his form more solid than Marcus had yet seen. "You used us as weapons, calculated our abilities and positioned us for maximum effectiveness. Is that a problem?" Marcus asked. For the first time since they'd met, Grimjaw's mechanical jaw clicked in what might have been amusement. "Problem? Human. That was the most efficient hunt I have seen in decades." They were no longer looking at Marcus as prey, or even as competition. They were looking at him as something else entirely, a pack leader. But the greatest test was yet to come. The Apex Sanctum was a place of legends. Built into the heart of a dead star, it was where the greatest predators in the galaxy came to prove their worth against the ultimate challenge. As Marcus stood on the obsidian platform overlooking the crucible of dominance, he realized that everything up until now had been preparation for this moment. Korthak the Worldbreaker stood across from him, and Marcus finally understood why they called him that. The creature was easily 20 feet tall, his armored carapace scarred from 1,000 battles. His species, the Devastarii, had once consumed entire star systems, turning them into feeding grounds that lasted for millennia. But it wasn't just Korthak that Marcus faced. Around the Crucible's perimeter stood representatives of every apex predator species in the galaxy. This wasn't just a trial, it was a judgment. If Marcus lost here, humanity would be marked as prey species forever. "Small human," Korthak's voice resonated through the chamber like an earthquake. "I have devoured the champions of worlds. I have broken armies with my bare hands. What makes you think your pathetic species can stand against the apex of evolution?" Marcus checked his equipment one last time. He'd been allowed to bring whatever gear he could carry, but against something like Korthak, even military-grade weapons seemed inadequate. Instead, he'd chosen something different, something that spoke to humanity's greatest strength. "You want to know what makes humans special?" Marcus called back, his voice carrying clearly through the sanctum's acoustics. "It's not our strength. It's not our speed or our natural weapons. It's that we never give up. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome." Korthak laughed, a sound like colliding planets. "Pretty words. Let us see how they taste." The Devastator charged, each step cracking the obsidian floor. Marcus didn't run. Instead, he activated the device he'd been concealing in his equipment pack. Instantly, the crucible filled with a thick, choking smoke that obscured vision and confused most alien sensory organs. But Marcus had grown up in the toxic fog of Kerenza's industrial districts. He moved through the smoke like he was born in it. Korthak's confusion was brief but critical. In that moment of disorientation, Marcus deployed his real weapons, not guns or explosives, but something uniquely human. He began setting traps. Humans were persistence hunters, but they were also ambush predators when they needed to be. Marcus had studied the Crucible's layout for days, identifying weak points in the structure, calculating angles and trajectories. Now he put that knowledge to work. The first trap was simple: a pressure-sensitive charge placed where Korthak would naturally step when trying to track him through the smoke. The explosion didn't hurt the Devastator, but it knocked him off balance, sending him crashing into one of the Crucible's support pillars. The second trap was more complex. Marcus had rigged a series of plasma charges to bring down a section of the ceiling, creating a choke point that would limit Korthak's mobility. As the debris rained down, Marcus was already moving to the next phase of his plan. "Coward!" Korthak roared, his massive claws tearing through the smoke as he tried to locate his prey. "Face me with honor." Marcus's voice came from the darkness, seeming to echo from multiple directions. "Honors for species that can afford it. Humans fight to win." That's when the third trap activated. Marcus had spent hours rewiring the Crucible's power systems, turning the entire arena into a massive electrical circuit. When Korthak stepped onto the conductive plates Marcus had placed, 50,000 volts of electricity coursed through the Devastator's body. For the first time in centuries, Korthak screamed in pain. But the creature wasn't down. With a roar of fury, he began tearing apart the arena itself, his claws ripping through obsidian and metal alike. If he couldn't find Marcus, he'd bring down the entire structure. That's when Marcus revealed his final gambit. He emerged from the smoke, standing directly in front of Korthak with no weapons drawn. The watching apex predators leaned forward, expecting to see the human finally make his last stand. Instead, Marcus began to speak. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Korthak? You're apex because you were born that way. You're strong, fast, nearly indestructible. But that's also your weakness. You've never had to be anything else." Korthak paused, confused by this sudden change in tactics. Marcus continued. "Humans? We're apex because we chose to be. We climbed to the top of our food chain not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we were the most stubborn. And that means when you put us in a cage with other apex predators." Marcus smiled, and it was a predator's smile. "We don't become prey. We become pack leaders." Around the Crucible, something unprecedented happened. Zareth, his wounds from their earlier fight still visible, stepped forward. Then Vex'tar materialized from the shadows. Grimjaw's mechanical jaw clicked in approval. One by one, the apex predators Marcus had faced began moving to stand behind him. Korthak looked around in disbelief. "What is this?" Marcus spread his arms wide. "This is what humans do, Worldbreaker. We don't just survive, we unite others around a cause. These apex predators aren't following me because I beat them. They're following me because I showed them something they'd never seen before, that being apex isn't about being the strongest. It's about making everyone around you stronger." For the first time in his existence, Korthak the Worldbreaker faced something he'd never encountered. Not a prey species trying to survive, but an entire pack of apex predators united under a single banner. And at their head stood a human who had proven that Earth's children belonged at the top of the galactic food chain. The aftermath of the Crucible sent shockwaves throughout the Apex Sanctum. Word spread quickly through the galactic predator communities. The human hadn't just survived the trials. He had united the most dangerous beings in known space under his leadership. Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of being offered the crown of dominance, the symbol of ultimate predatory authority that had remained unclaimed for over 1,000 years. But as he stood in the Hall of Apex Lords, surrounded by creatures that could tear apart battleships with their bare hands, he realized the real test was just beginning. "The human refuses the crown," announced Korthak, his massive form still bearing the scorch marks from their battle. To everyone's surprise, the Worldbreaker had become one of Marcus's most vocal supporters. "He claims leadership must be earned, not awarded." Elder Vorthak, the ancient cosmic devourer who served as the Sanctum's final authority, studied Marcus with eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. "Curious. In 10 millennia, no apex has refused the crown. You unite our kind, then reject dominion over them. Explain yourself, human." Marcus stepped forward, feeling the weight of hundreds of predatory gazes upon him. Around him stood his unlikely pack: Zareth the Bone Crusher, now sworn as his primary enforcer; Vex'tar the Umbral Stalker, his spymaster and scout; Grimjaw the Cybernetic Terror, his heavy assault specialist; and dozens of others who had pledged themselves to his cause. "On my world," Marcus began, "we have a saying: with great power comes great responsibility. If I take that crown, I become just another tyrant ruling through fear. But if I lead by example—" He gestured to the assembled apex predators. "Look around you. When's the last time this many apex species worked together instead of trying to kill each other?" Kalen the Mind Ripper, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His psychic probe touched the edges of Marcus's thoughts, not invasively, but with something approaching reverence. "I have tasted the minds of countless species across the galaxy. But this human, his thoughts burn with something I have never encountered before." "What do you sense, Mind Ripper?" Elder Vorthak asked. Kalen's black eyes reflected an inner fire. "Hope. Pure, undiluted hope. Not the desperate hope of prey begging for mercy, but the hope of a predator who believes he can make the galaxy better. It's intoxicating." A ripple of unease went through the assembled creatures. Hope was not an emotion associated with apex predators. Marcus seized the moment. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You've all spent so long being the ultimate predators that you've forgotten what it's like to build something instead of just destroying it. Humans didn't reach the top of our food chain by being the biggest or strongest. We did it by working together." "Pretty words," snarled Dexthal, the Planet Ripper, a crystalline being whose species had shattered worlds for sport. "But what do you propose?" "That we become peaceful." Marcus laughed, and the sound was sharp as breaking glass. "Peace? From apex predators? You misunderstand me completely." His expression hardened, and suddenly every creature in the hall could feel the lethal intent radiating from him. "I'm not proposing we stop being predators. I'm proposing we find better prey." The hall fell silent. "There are threats out there that make all of us look like hatchlings," Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "The Void Devourers that exist between galaxies. The machine consciousness that consumed the Andromeda spiral. The nightmare entities that feed on reality itself. We've been so busy fighting each other that we've ignored the real monsters." Elder Vorthak's ancient eyes widened slightly. "You speak of legends, human, myths. Do I?" Marcus pulled out a data tablet he'd been carrying. 3 months ago, long-range sensors detected an anomaly in the Kepler void, space itself being consumed by something that shouldn't exist. 2 weeks ago, an entire star system in the outer rim went dark. No explosions, no stellar collapse. Just gone. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of creatures that had never known fear. The galaxy's real apex predators are coming, and when they arrive, they're not going to care about our territories or our hunting grounds. They're going to see one thing: food. Zareth's claws scraped against the floor as he shifted nervously. What do you propose, pack leader? Marcus smiled, and it was the smile of a human who had just revealed his true plan. I propose we do what humans do best. I propose we hunt. The transformation that came over the assembled apex predators was immediate and electric. These were beings bred for violence, genetically programmed for the hunt. The idea of facing prey that might actually be a challenge, enemies that threaten their very existence, awakened something primal in them. But hunting such prey requires more than individual strength, Marcus continued. It requires coordination, strategy, and above all, unity. Not the unity of submission, but the unity of a pack that trusts each other absolutely. Vex'tar materialized fully from his shadow form, his voice carrying new conviction. The human speaks truth. I have felt the approach of these entities in the spaces between spaces. They come not as conquerors but as devourers. We face them divided, we become food. We face them united. We become the apex predators of the entire universe. Grimjaw finished, his mechanical jaw clicking in anticipation. Elder Korthak studied Marcus for a long moment, then did something unprecedented. The ancient cosmic devourer knelt. I have devoured the essence of 1,000 species, the elder said. But never have I encountered one that could unite the apex without dominating them. The crown of dominance is yours by right of conquest, human. But more than that, you have earned something far rarer, the willing loyalty of those who bow to no other power. As the assembled apex predators began to kneel one by one, Marcus realized that humanity had just gained something unprecedented in galactic history. An army of the most dangerous beings in existence, united not by fear or conquest, but by shared purpose. The real war was about to begin. 6 months after the unity of the apex, Marcus stood on the bridge of the World Eater, a massive ship that had once been Korthak's personal dreadnought, now transformed into the command vessel of the most dangerous fleet in galactic history. Through the viewport, he could see the edge of known space, where the first confirmed Void Devourer had been detected. The creature was massive beyond comprehension, a writhing mass of dark energy and impossible geometry that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to think about. It had already consumed 3 star systems, growing larger with each feast. Preliminary scans complete, reported Vex'tar from his position at the tactical station. In the months since their unity, the Umbral Stalker had adapted to serve as the fleet's intelligence coordinator, his shadow-stepping abilities making him perfect for reconnaissance missions into hostile space. The entity measures approximately 50,000 kilometers in diameter and appears to be composed of collapsed space-time. Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving the cosmic horror before them. Around him, the bridge crew worked with deadly efficiency, each one an apex predator from a different world, now united in common cause. Zareth commanded the weapon systems, his tactical brilliance turned from personal combat to fleet coordination. Grimjaw oversaw engineering, his cybernetic enhancements allowing him to interface directly with the ship systems. Kalen served as their communications officer, his psychic abilities enabling instantaneous coordination across the entire fleet. Status report from the pack leaders, Marcus commanded. Kalen's black eyes gleamed as he relayed information through psychic links. Alpha Pack reports ready. Korthak's devastating shock troops are in position aboard the boarding vessels. Beta Pack confirms. Dexthal's Planet Rippers have their reality anchor weapons online. Gamma Pack acknowledges. The Cosmic Devourers have their essence disruption cannons charged. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. In the months since their alliance, they had learned something remarkable. When apex predators worked together instead of competing, they didn't just add their strengths. They multiplied them. The fleet that surrounded them represented the combined military might of over 50 apex species, all coordinated under humanity's greatest gift: the ability to unite natural enemies around a common cause. All packs, this is Alpha Prime. Marcus spoke into the fleet-wide communication system. Remember what we learned in the simulations. This entity feeds on conventional matter and energy. Our weapons won't hurt it directly, but they will disrupt its feeding process long enough for the real attack. He gestured to Zareth, who activated the fleet's primary tactical display. The image showed their battle plan, not a direct assault but something far more sophisticated. Phase 1. Beta Pack initiates reality anchoring. Lock this thing into normal space so it can't phase shift when we hurt it. Phase 2. Gamma Pack begins essence disruption, cut off its ability to feed on the consumed star systems. Phase 3. Marcus's expression hardened. Alpha Pack goes hunting. The plan was ambitious beyond anything that had ever been attempted. Instead of trying to destroy the Void Devourer through brute force, they were going to do something that only apex predators could conceive of. They were going to hunt it from the inside. All units, begin Phase 1. Space around the Void Devourer began to shimmer as reality anchor weapons fired in perfect synchronization. The entity, which had been shifting between dimensions to avoid the few military forces that had previously engaged it, suddenly found itself locked in normal space. For the first time in its existence, the cosmic horror experienced something like surprise. Phase 2. Execute. The essence disruption cannons fired, their beams designed not to damage but to sever the metaphysical connections that allowed the entity to feed on consumed matter. Across 50,000 kilometers of dark energy, the Void Devourer convulsed as its food source was suddenly cut off. Direct hit, Vex'tar reported. The entity is disoriented but not damaged. Is trying to shift back to hyperspace. Maintain anchor fire, Marcus commanded. Zareth, launch Alpha Pack boarding pods. What happened next would be remembered in galactic history as either the greatest act of courage or the most spectacular suicide mission ever attempted. Hundreds of boarding pods, each containing a squad of apex predators, launched directly at the Void Devourer's surface. Marcus was in the lead pod along with his core pack. As they approached the entity's writhing surface, he could feel reality bending around them. His neural implants screamed warnings as they passed through layers of twisted spacetime. Remember, he spoke to his team as their pod prepared to breach the entity's outer membrane. We're not here to fight this thing. We're here to perform surgery. They punched through into an interior space that defied description. The inside of the Void Devourer was a maze of impossible geometries, where up and down had no meaning and the walls were composed of compressed star matter. But Marcus and his team had trained for this, using the unique human ability to adapt to any environment, no matter how alien. Target located, Vex'tar reported, his shadow form allowing him to scout ahead through the maze. Central processing node is 2 kilometers anti-spinward and 5-dimensional layers down. They moved through the entity's interior like a virus attacking a cell, each apex predator using their specialized abilities to navigate the hostile environment. Zareth's tactical mind mapped their route through the shifting passages. Grimjaw's cybernetic enhancements let him interface with the entity's energy systems. Kalen used his psychic abilities to shield them from the maddening influences of the twisted space. And Marcus? Marcus did what humans did best. He held them all together, coordinating their efforts and adapting their strategy as they encountered the unexpected. When they reached the central processing node, they found something that changed everything. The Void Devourer wasn't just a cosmic predator. It was a weapon, created by an intelligence so vast and alien that it existed across multiple galaxies simultaneously. New contact on long-range sensors. Came Vex'tar's urgent report through their communication link. Multiple Void Devourers approaching from the intergalactic void. Estimated time to arrival, 6 hours. Marcus looked at the processing node, then at his pack, and made a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Change of plans, he said calmly. We're not destroying this thing. We're taking it. Using techniques that combined human technological adaptation with the unique abilities of his apex predator allies, Marcus and his team began the delicate process of severing the Void Devourer's connection to its creators and establishing their own control links. 3 hours later, the Apex fleet received a transmission that would become legendary. This is Alpha Prime to all packs. Operation complete. We now have our own Void Devourer, and I've learned something interesting from its memory banks. These entities have been hunting across the universe for millions of years, consuming galaxies and growing stronger. But they've never encountered anything like us. Apex predators who refuse to be prey. As the approaching Void Devourers entered the system, they found something unprecedented waiting for them. One of their own kind, now controlled by the very prey species they had come to consume, backed by a fleet of the most dangerous beings the galaxy had ever produced. The Apex fleet's new battle cry echoed across space. "We are the Apex. We are the pack. And the hunt begins now." In the end, humanity had done more than prove they belonged among the galaxy's apex predators. They had shown the universe that when Earth's children set their minds to it, they didn't just adapt to the food chain, they rewrote it entirely. The age of humanity as a prey species was over. The age of the apex pack had begun.